You are listening to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all the latest news, Overwatch League results, and mishaps in Overwatch. Here are your hosts, Totemly Drunk and Edinar.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all things Overwatch. I am your host, Totemly Drunk, and tonight on episode 171, we'll be discussing the latest changes to hit the public test realm. We have the United States Overwatch World Cup roster shortlist, which we're gonna kind of grade and pick through. Of course, we had Stage 4 debut, and we had, Rollock introduced to the Overwatch League, a ton of shenanery in regards to the meta evolution. Heroes that we're not used to seeing suddenly back in play. A lot of the 3-3, staple heroes, really not so much play this past week. But of course, we got things outside of that as well. But before we can get into the news and introduce you to my co-host, let me just take a moment to thank everyone who is joining us tonight on Twitch for our live show, and of course to thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host Edinar. And Ed, what a week it was! We've basically gone from two of the heaviest news weeks to having one of the most intriguing weeks that we've had, at least within Overwatch League, with the introduction of Rollock. We've also spent a good amount of time on PTR doing roll queue as well. We wrapped up some placements, and we did pretty good. I know we climbed a good bit when we were doing your tank placements when we went 5-0, which was fantastic. But how's this past week been, man?
It's been a lot of fun. We got to see a whole new Overwatch League meta, Mei-ta. Sorry. Yes.
The fact that you laughed at that just made it that much worse.
Yeah, smooth-headed. But it's one of those things where it was such an interesting week of actual Overwatch League, and then the 2-2-2, like you said, we went into did our placements on the PTR, and in Spider's words, not mine, we learned Ed is not a complete crap tank. Let that soak in. I got a compliment from Spider.
See, I feel like so much of that was just the fact that I was just in the thick of things as Moira. I was like, yeah, I'm going offense. You guys.
Yeah, the only thing is we had to deal with Spider on Sigma.
Mm-hmm.
So, he was learning the new characters. Well, me and you really carried the team.
Yeah, that is definitely us.
Yes. So, I placed well in that. I still have to do my DPS placements, which is fun.
We should do that tomorrow.
Yes. I've learned that Arcade is literally trashed here. Mystery Heroes is worse than it's ever been in its existence. So I cannot wait for regular or old quick play to be in arcade mode so we can use that to use our boxes.
I feel like when we've grouped, it's been better. I know when we've kind of tried to go in and do it solo, the groups have been terrible. Because I know I had a similar experience yesterday, or was it? No, it was Monday. It was Monday before OWLN. That I was trying to queue up, and the first 4 or 5 games were just really awful.
Yeah, I think it helps when you have at least 2 people who are communicating. Because I'm not expecting anyone to be on comms and communicating that much in arcade mode. I'm fine with that, but when you actually have 2 people communicating, it actually helps a little. So, but yeah, it's horrible. But it's been a fun week. We did OWL by the numbers last night without you, and that was interesting. Me hosting, I don't know about that. It wasn't as smooth as when Totem runs the show.
I can't imagine why.
With that. Yeah. So, yeah, but I'm interested to dive into the news ahead and talk about the new meta, and
you're gonna say that every time now.
Every single time, just to annoy everyone, because it's what I do. But yeah, it's lots of changes, lots of interesting things to talk about this week, especially the Overwatch World Cup.
Yeah, we have some pretty stacked teams.
Outside of the U.S.
I mean, I figured one of us was going to go there, and you definitely took the bait and ran with that one, but we'll get into that. And we'll also cover, like, some of the other World Cup teams that we know of. But just as an FYI, guys, if you want to keep up with all the World Cup news, if you go on our website, I listed all the rosters for the top 10 countries. Now, granted, all of them aren't the final 7, because there's, like, 3 or 4 who still have, like, the 12-man shortlist, but you can find a list of all of that stuff there, so go check that out. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the news from this week. So first off, we got a PTR update this last Thursday. So this was deployed on July 25th, and imagine this, Ed. We actually had things change while they were on the PTR. It wasn't just PTR straight to live, so what changed exactly? Well, everyone was really upset about Moira. Specifically, the Fade change that they had made, where you could basically use Fade while you were stunned, aka you could basically Fade yourself out of literally anything. Just about. Anything in the game.
Yeah, that was needed. I think everyone kind of agreed to that.
Yes, because as I mentioned, like, when I was playing Moira, and this was before, like, this patch was in before we did our placements even, but, like, when I was playing Moira before then, every time I would get hooked or anything, I would just Fade, and I'm like, well, that was easy. This just felt stupid.
Right, and you know the person on the other side is just raging on the inside. Like that Roadhog that gets that super, like, one of those satisfying hooks while they're on the move, and you're like, I gotcha. And you're like, I hate you so much, Moira.
Yeah, you like Fade, and you're like, deuces. And you're like out of there.
You're like, you just hooked nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Deal with that.
Now I gotta wait another, 8 seconds or whatever it is nowadays. So the Moira Fade can no longer be used while you're stunned. So the outcry from the community was heard by the dev team, by Team 4, so that got reverted. And they also adjusted Sigma a little bit on the PTR as well, specifically with the Kinetic Grasp. So the Kinetic Grasp cooldown was reduced from 15 seconds to 13 seconds. And then it also buffed the shield per damage conversion from 0.33 to 0.4. So, a little bit of a buff. I still feel Sigma is a little undertuned. I don't know where exactly they're going to try to shift things, but it does seem like defensively, like, his armor was a bigger issue, just knowing that it was at a 15-second cooldown, which was just massive when compared to basically every other, like, tank cooldown in the game.
Sigma just feels clunky and then unrefined at this point. As bad as it sounds, the worst thing that they did is they had said that Sigma's a main tank. And I don't think Sigma right now could be a main tank. But Sigma's not quite an off tank either. Like, I just don't know where Sigma fits in at this point.
I feel like if they're trying to classify Sigma as a main tank, they need to increase the regen of his actual barrier, because it regains its health a lot slower compared to the other tanks. So I think they need to just bring him up more, and maybe we'll see something more in line with the other barrier tanks at that point.
Yeah, and his damage ability. So, like, his main attack has a 20-yard range. So that in turn kind of he has, like, the slowest building ult out of any of the tanks. And if you increase the range, sure, that might help with it because you're actually doing damage, not just, plucking around. And then his right click, or not his right click, the rock ball, whatever it's called. That is a very underwhelming ability. Everyone's just like, okay, well, if you hit it from long range and knock someone over, they're down for 4 seconds. Sure, okay. That would require someone to, A, not be behind a shield, and B, your team being able to dive on the person that was knocked down 20 yards away, which is not always viable.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weaker fire strike to me because it gets
It
stopped by shields. So, like, you have that ability, which is pretty weak, a very limited main attack. The shield is, once you get the shield down, I think the shield is amazing. The ult is the best part of the kit.
Right.
And the vacuum cleaner that he has to get his shield back is just, it's very niche. It needs more damage mitigation or maybe some way of getting out of trouble, like some form of movement ability. It just, if Goats was still a thing, Sigma would be a god, I think. But Goats isn't a thing anymore. So, like, I don't think they could have released Sigma with 222 not in place.
Yeah, and the thing too is, like, you look at, like, Zarya with her bubble, and then you compare that to Sigma with his grasp, and, you know, when you're going up against a Zarya, you're worried about the damage output, because obviously, you know, as she's soaking in damage from that personal barrier, she is gaining energy, therefore doing more damage. When you're going up against someone like Sigma, he's only getting a little bit more survivability. His damage output isn't actually getting any higher. So it's not like a threat, so to speak. Like, yeah, you're gonna survive a little bit longer, but the bread and butter of Sigma's entire kit is definitely his ultimate, as you mentioned, and that's really the one thing that people are kind of like latching onto as like the anti-bunker. But outside of that, you know, he just seems to kind of be middle of the ground right now. And when you compare him to the other barrier tanks, and I know Reinhardt right now isn't necessarily meta by any means, but
no,
you're going to have to compare him to Orisa right out of the gate. And the fact that you have such a short range means that you're not able to land the effective, you know, just shield damage going output, or, you know, just spray and pray, basically. Because, I mean, with Orisa, you can just do a little bit of everything, and you just don't have the same capabilities with someone like Sigma in his current iteration right now.
Yeah, and, like, Orisa has, when it boils down to it, like, 3 defensive utilities at her grab. She has her shield, which she can weave in and out of to dodge attacks. She has her Halt, and then she has the suction ball. And, you know, it's one of those things. Those 3 things can help prevent the damage you take and lets Orisa live for a while. Well, with Sigma, you can't really do that. You have the vacuum to gain shield, but now this was actually changed today. I think you can retract the shield while you're using the vacuum.
Okay.
Because they updated the PTR today and they put in 2 new changes. So Kinetic Grasp can now be canceled by accretion, and Experimental Barrier can now be recalled while Kinetic Grasp or Accretion are in use. So you can pull back the shield while you're vacuuming and then shoot it at the subject to prevent any splash damage or anything like that. Give yourself a little bit more viability. It's just that shield is so, it's less reactive and more proactive. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't use the shield to quick, oh, there's somebody behind us ulting on us, I'm going to whip around with Weinhardt's shield, or I'm going to turn around and drop Orisa's shield real quick. You have to bring the shield in and then deploy it out, and it takes a little bit. So it's a unique kit, and I'm worried that we might get into Ana situation at this point.
Yeah, it could be. And as Spider will tell you, it is pretty hard to block like a self-destruct with the shield, because like I like when we were doing our placements, I thought his placement looked pretty good, and then we ended up suffering like a 3k or a 4k from that specific self-destruct. So I feel like the shield itself is really going to be the one thing that's going to differentiate the good Sigma players from the bad Sigma players. But I do agree, there's probably going to be like a month period just for a lot of these tank players to really just try to get their feet underneath them with a new character, even though, you know, this one floats.
And has weird feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, like all right, so Cash brings up a point in chat. The Sigma Shield can replace the Mei wall to block the pulse. Well, that has a trickle down effect. One, you either A, lose your own Roadhog, who we've learned is very important, or B, Sigma's replacing your Orisa, which in turn is if you're using your shield to block a Roadhog yoink, you're leaving you and the rest of your team completely wide open and defenseless. Think of if you're all standing together and a fair is up above you and a Reinhardt just turns the shield up. Everyone else just has free range. So it's like, it's catch-22 if you do something like that. So that's why, like, it's stuff like that that I'm not sure that Sigma is main take capable.
Definitely going to spend some more time on him, and it seems like they keep adding more and more stuff with each like minor patch. So I want to see how many more updates we're to get before he actually does hit live, because we still have a couple of weeks of testing left for Sigma. So definitely keep an eye on all of that. So outside of that, we have an update on how Overwatch has been doing in regards to in-game content sales, and Overwatch has actually surpassed the $1 billion mark, becoming the 64th game to pass that mark. And apparently, like, they accomplished this feat last month, and we're just now hearing about it. So for Activision Blizzard, this is their 6th title to reach the $1 billion mark. So it's following in the footsteps of games like World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, Destiny, Hearthstone, everyone's favorite Activision Blizzard game, Candy Crush. So like,
so let's be real, is probably the most successful out of all
of them. I am not even going to argue against that.
Yeah, like Candy Crush is why we're allowed to have Overwatch. Like, let that sink in real quick.
It's just a matter of, well, when are we to get like the free to play mobile match 3 games for these other franchises at this point?
We have Candy Crush and WoW now.
Yeah, we do, but I'm just saying, like, we don't have it as like a standalone app. It's built within the game.
Fine.
Because, like, I know at one point there was like Peggle as like an add-on too for Warcraft.
Yeah. Transfer. Let's not bring up Destiny. The sore subject. Let's not talk about that. But yeah, bring a Candy Crush game where it's just like, you know, instead of, you know, candy, it's like famous Warcraft people's faces. Match up 3 Lich Kings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see? We could do that.
Absolutely.
But it's cool that, and they did make special note of this, that does not include any of the merchandise sales, really anything to do with the Overwatch League. Outside of, I believe, tokens. Overwatch League skin tokens for in-game. So none of the buy-ins, none of the jerseys, stuff like that. So 1 billion and then some. So it's pretty impressive.
I mean, I don't even want to look back and think about how many loot boxes I bought for the events. I stopped doing that, guys.
Yeah, and I mean, they did it in, what, 3 years?
Yeah.
That's pretty darn impressive. So, yay! Overwatch is doing good. Although I don't think any of us had any doubts that they were doing bad.
Don't you know that Overwatch is the dead game, Ed?
Yeah, God. It's like they lost some viewership this week because the Fortnite World Cup was on.
It's almost, it's almost like, too, like, there was an Overwatch League franchise that sold almost 2 times the value of 2 of the LCS teams.
Yeah.
Strange.
It's weird. It's weird how that works out. Still bitter about that, though. At least I don't have to cheer for Raucus. Or Jake. We're talking the Outlaws got sold. Reportedly.
Yeah, we'll probably talk more about that next week, because that was kind of like last minute stuff to pop up today. Yeah. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the hot community topics for this week. So first up, Ed, let's talk about the Overwatch World Cup. So we've had a week of announcements. Teams have had to basically announced their 12-man rosters. I know some of them are still narrowing it down to their 7-man, so we're expecting the announcements for the rest of those basically any day now. But let's talk about the United States team, who going into this are in the top 10 country list. They're currently ranked 5th overall, and of course that is based off of how they've done in the prior years. And our short list, which does consist of 12 players, features 5 DPS, 4 tanks, and then 3 support players. So looking at our DPS potential lineup, we have Dante, Corey, Sinatra, KSF, and Hydration. For the tank line, we basically have Space for the off-tank. That was a given. Then our main tank options are Muma, Super, and Fact Fiction. For support, we have main support Moth, and then, as per usual, the only 2 flex supports in the United States, Sleepy and Raucous.
No. That is not true.
That's the only ones that come up.
Okay, so here's my thing. There is a Overwatch League player, flex support from the United States that's not on this list, who I think should have been on this list.
Okay, and who would that be?
Dogman. I would have had my second pick should be Dogman. And not because I think Dogman honestly is that much better than Sleepy and Raucous. It's if you watch any kind of international competition, you need that hype man. You need that person that just goes crazy, that brings the crowd into it, gets the team pumped up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the rah-rah, sis, boom, bah. That's Dogman to a T.
I'm trying to see if Dogman had tweeted anything as you were talking about
He did mention something about the tryouts for it. So he did appear to try out for it.
Mm-hmm.
So he must not have just made the cut, and that's weird to me. But other than that, yeah, there's like no supports out there. You're looking at contenders teams. And, you know, we'll talk a little bit later, but Elk was not part of this. Chose not to participate.
He chose not to. Dogman did say that he underperformed in tryouts this time around.
So I would have preferred Dogman over, like, Raucous. And that's not, like, really a knock on Raucous. I would have preferred Dogman over Sleepy, too. But, yeah, there's just no one else out there for supports.
Yeah, there's very limited options, and some of the other options just aren't 18. That's the other thing to take into consideration here as well. Now, I mean, the tank one, you really can't go wrong with any of the picks. Obviously, you know, Space is our off-tank. There's no denying that, because he's the only off-tank out of those 4. And I have to say, like, I don't know if you're going to value just the synergy that you have with the LA Valiant and just pick Fact Fiction, but I feel like between Muma and Super, Muma is the better option. I feel like Super is the odd man out in this situation, regardless of what his performance has been like throughout, you know, this season, or being in the MVP run-in, or anything like that. Muma just provides more flexibility and versatility in the current 2-2-2 evolving meta, and a lot of that is just based on the Orisa play that we know Muma is just better at, because we've seen Super get subbed out in favor of playing Smurf whenever they were running the DPS comps here recently.
Yeah, no, it's... Super is definitely... He would be my last choice of the 4 tanks. I think Muma's probably the best option they got. Just from a pure versatility standpoint. In the meta that we have now. Now, granted, we don't know what the meta is going to be, because all these changes that are on PTR, they're not playing with. We don't know any of this stuff, and we won't know until the stage playoffs, season playoffs, no stage playoffs, what the new meta will be. So, you know, I tend to stick to Muma on this one, but Fact Fiction, it's hard to give up that synergy, like you said, but I'd still have to go Puma, and obviously Space.
Yeah, so I feel like the majority of the discussion so far is either at who you pick for flex support. Now, do you... I feel like going into this year, after Sleepy kind of got benched for a while because the Shock were playing Violet, and then, Sleepy got dealt to the Justice, I definitely feel like there's been a little bit of fall off there. And I know part of that's kind of like skewered just due to the fact that, the Justice have definitely had their fair share of struggles. But if we're seeing Anna, I would expect Raucous to be the pick there. But I'm also not opposed to them just trying something different, and you still have that synergy of years past when Moth and Sleepy were on the Shock together. So I'm still very conflicted. I just wish that we had more options as opposed to primarily just the two, and that's year and year at this point. So hopefully in the future it's going to be a little bit better. But it's intriguing to me with the U.S. team. Everyone is always expecting the U.S. to do great things in the World Cup, and every time I look at the list, I'm not disappointed in like the people that they select. It's just the fact that you look at some of the other countries, and I just know that there's more depth in their short list or even in their final seven compared to what we are going to be able to bring. So looking at the DPS, Ed, there's some interesting choices here. There's a lot of talk about if you would prefer to have like Dante coming in to run the Sombra, or if you just want to stick with someone like Sinatra, who has played Sombra but also flexes over to the Tracer, because that kind of like frees up a spot to bring in probably the most flexible person out of that lot for projectile, that being Hydration. So out of these 5 DPS, are you expecting that we'll move forward with 3 DPS? And if so, who do you feel like the US is going to move into that final 7-man?
Right. This was not how I expected the DPS lineup to look. I think there's one glaring name for me missing from this, and I don't know if you tried out, but Nero is not on this list. And I think Nero should be on this list because I would put him on the team almost immediately. But since he's not there, I'm saying Sinatra and Corey, to me, are on the team.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to give it to Hydration over Dante. I think the flexibility with Hydration might just be a little bit better. The only thing that I would say with Dante... Oh, Trenchford saying Nero bowed out. Okay, that makes sense then. The only thing I can say with Dante is you could have him in there as your backup DPS and your backup flex tank. Because he could be that 7th person to come in and play Roadhog. That's all I'm thinking, but I like Hydration over Dante at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So Corey, Sinatra, Hydration would probably be my choice. KSF, I think, is the odd man out in all this. It's kind of insane that like half this team was on the San Francisco Shock last year.
And then the Outlaws the year prior.
Yeah, it's like
for Team US.
Can we get players from the US that are not part of the Shock or Outlaw organization in the past 2 years? I guess not. Outside of Hydration and Corey. So, but yeah, Corey, Sinatra, Hydration. That'd be my pick. Sadly, no Nero. No Baby Bay.
Right.
No Blase, so no Doomfist. Like, that's one thing the United States does have, is they do have some pretty good DPS choices. I will give them that. They're not out of this world amazing. They have a lot of niche players. Corey is going to probably make the team based on his Widow play, because he's our best Widow on the team. Hydration and Dante are combined for the most versatile, and Sinatra is... As much as people want to knock on Sinatra, he's probably one of the best DPS players in the league. Especially when he goes onto Tracer, and I know his Tracer's been knocked a lot by you and me both. But with no Brig, no Zen Orb, truly...
Well, less Zen Orb.
Yeah. And that's the thing is Zen is the two least played supports right now are Zen and oh wait no Moira's right below Zen. So Zen is third from the bottom, and then Brig is the bottom. You know that spells good things for Tracer.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think it's going to be those three. Who do you got?
I'm not gonna disagree with you, Ed. Like that's who I've been sticking with. Dante is a curious one to me. Like I feel like if you're comparing him hero to hero with Sinatra, Dante has the better Sombra, Sinatra has the better Tracer. I don't know if that's gonna be enough though. I feel like between the two, Sinatra's more of a leader on the team, but like I don't really see a lot of situations where we're gonna see like someone go into an off role in the World Cup. I don't think it's gonna be that often. And besides, like if let's say that does happen, you have that option with hydration on top of the projectile. So all around hydration is a better fit, and hydration's already kind of filled into the off tank role already. Like we saw this past week. I forgot
about that. He was on Wrecking Ball.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is hydration in? Alright, we'll go with it.
So, US this year, we're waiting on a finalized list. I think we're going to be spot on, though, in regards to that. But let's look at some of the other teams that announced their final rosters. So, looking at Canada's like, you know what, we got third place last year. Let's just bring out the exact same team. So, for the DPS, they picked Surefour Agilities, or Agilites, depending on if he shows up or not. And Mangachu. Tank duo, you got XQC with Note. And for support, you got Bonnie and then Crimso from Team Envy. So, I'm expecting good things from Canada. I don't see a lot of falloff from XQC, despite him, expanding his horizons a lot more when it comes to his streaming, and he's still putting in the grind in Overwatch, so...
Didn't he just get suspended from Overwatch? I'm pretty sure he got a suspension like today or yesterday.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I cannot confirm nor deny that.
I was watching Seagull stream, and he's just like, "Stop it with the XQC spam. I know he got suspended." I'm like, okay, XQC suspended again. Not shocked.
So, last year, the runner-up, we have China, who's ranked third. They have 4 players from the Chengdu Hunters this year. So at their DPS core, we got Eileen, Jinmu, and Leave. More on him later. Tank line of Elsa and Gushui. With supports, both from Chengdu, that being Kyo and Yveltal. And I remember when they announced this, Ed, and I was just scrolling through like the announcement on Twitter, and everyone's like, "Where's our main?" And I'm like, did you guys forget how hard Gushui carried you guys last year? What's going on?
Yeah, you realize Gushui, MVP probably of the league, maybe, depending on the votes, which we'll talk about. But like, Gushui's in the top 6 players ranked by fans, coaches, GMs, and players. Meng's on the hamster. Mm-hmm. Like, now I do get the fact that it is, it would basically just be the Chengdu Hunters and Eileen and Leave. Like 5 Chengdu Hunters. But, sometimes that's not a good thing. I mean, Chengdu is bottom 10 team.
I mean, it didn't work for the US in past years.
Yeah. Like, we're taking half... Like, we could end up half starting the Outlaw squad. All right. Let's take a bottom 10 team and put them into the Overwatch World Cup. So, I don't know. It's a good team. Controversy around Crystal, I guess, is out there with why he's not on the team, but they got a pretty decent team.
Yeah, that's the thing too, though. Like, when we're talking about China has a couple of people that are in the same boat where their hero pool is so vast. And Leaf and Crystal both fall in this because we've seen him hop anywhere from like 10 to 12 different heroes in a series. Like, you don't want to have too many of those, like pocket knife type, players on your team. Like, you're gonna get the options no matter what. Now, outside of that, I really like the Finland team this year that they put together, who round out the top 10. And, there's one interesting thing about this one in particular that might throw some people off. So, looking at the support line, we have Mei-ta from the Atlanta Reign and Shaz. So we're not getting the LA Gladiators support line this year. The tank line, we have LH Cloudy and Zappis. Zappis, obviously, former Overwatch League, now he's with Team Giganti. And then DPS, we have our boy Davin, who will hopefully make it to the Overwatch League one day. And he'll be with Ricky from Clockwork Vendetta. And then we have RCK on DPS. So we got the option of, Sombra there with RCK. And if not that, he's going back to his primary role, pre-Overwatch League, which was Projectile.
And I mean, we talked about this a little. Well, I talked about this a little with Team USA about having like Dante in there in case he could be the backup flex tank, while RCK could be a backup flex tank because he is a flex tank. Mm-hmm. So he could go in as Sombra or go in as Diva or go in as whatever. Now with their team, Ricky. Is he the Mei? I'm assuming he's the Mei player. Or is he the Torbjorn player?
To be honest, Ed, I do not watch enough CV to know.
I would assume Mei. Because, having a Mei player right now, probably a pretty good thing. So they have a pretty good team.
He's Mei Doomfist.
Mei Doomfist. Okay, see, yeah, I think you're golden there. And having Masa in there instead of Big Goose is a little surprising. Maybe Big Goose didn't want to go do it, but
I feel like Mei-ta plays a little bit safer. He knows how to disengage after he gets the boops. I don't know.
Yeah, but you get the synergy of two guys that have been playing as starting supports for 2 years now. Mm-hmm. That's synergy you can't really, throw aside outside of being the captain of Team Finland. You can. But and you get Zappis back in there, who had a very brief stint with the Florida Mayhem. And then Davin. Get him in the Overwatch League. We need him.
It's gotta happen.
He's the last of them.
At some point. Alright, so with that being said, I feel like we at least need to discuss the top ranked team. That being South Korea, who have won every single year, Ed. Now, we don't have the final roster, but I want to get your thoughts on what the final roster is going to be here. So, they have 5 DPS options, 3 tank options. Well, I mean, I guess it's technically 2 tank options, because they only have 1 main tank listed there. And then you have 4 supports. So, for DPS, they're looking at Architect, Carpe, DK, Haxel, and Nene. Oh, man. There's a lot of big names missing off of that, and it's worth noting South Korea by far has the deepest roster. Regardless of, like, the short list. Like, even beyond the short list. Probably deeper than some of the other top 10s. Yep. For tanks, there's Mono, who is the only main tank option. Then they also selected Choi Hyo-bin and Janu. Then for supports, they have 2 main supports, so they have Onimo and IDK, with the flex support options being Bedosian and Karif. Alright, Ed. I am very torn on the DPS. I feel like Architect is the odd man out in this situation. Mm-hmm. Then the question is, who do you favor over Carpe and the K? Because I don't know if they're going to pick both. Like, I feel like Haxel is a given just because he's going to be Projectile on that team. Mm-hmm. But do you feel like they're going to pick both Carpe and DK? Or do you feel like it'll be one and then I'll pick up Nene for the other option there?
I think they'd be fine to go Carpe and DK. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, if I had my choice in starting two, it'd be Decay and Hansen. That is who I would want. To me, it's between Carpe and Name. And maybe bring in Nene. It's like, well, crap. Which amazing player are we going to bench this time?
We're going to take our 15th best DPS, and they're still going to crush us.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to say it's going to be Haxel, Decay, and Carpe. That's going to be my DPS for this one. I'm throwing Nene by the wayside. And
just like New York does the playoffs.
Yes. They don't have to worry about anything this
or Nene does Gravitons.
Yeah. They don't have any stage playoffs to choke in this stage. So, they got that going for them. No?
Minor victories. Alright, so then we got the option of Choi Hyo-bin and then Janu for Flex Tank. See, this one I feel like is a little bit more interesting. I feel like Janu has probably had the better diva performance, but I feel like Choi Hyo-bin probably brings more to the table in regards to the flexibility. You're not really gonna get synergy either way, though.
No, you're not. I think it's probably gonna be, I would say Choi Hyo-bin, just because of the flexibility over Janu, I think. Janu is the better diva by far, in my mind, but Choi Hyo-bin's a much better Roadhog. So it's a matter of which one do you value more in the current meta. And right now, I think they value a good Roadhog. Again, as well, it shouldn't matter. So, I'm going Choi Hyo-bin, and then obviously don't really have a choice in the main tank situation.
Yeah, what are you feeling for the supports? I feel like Animo, when we're talking about player consistency, at least on the support line, he's probably kind of like at the forefront there. I know Karif has had some issues at times this season, and there was a time when, he was kind of getting like split time, but then he earned his spot back. I would really like to see IDK get the nod, just because it's something different, and New York's kind of always been kind of at the forefront of the South Korean team. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that it will be Animo and Bedosian for their support line, but I don't think they can go wrong with their team at all, if I'm being honest. Like, I feel like they could legit pick any combination of 7 players, provided they have 2 tanks, 2 supports, and we would still have them as the heavy favorites.
Yeah, I want to say, like, the fan favorite obviously is going to be Karif. I think that would be a mistake because unless it's pure Ana play. Like, Karif's Ana is amazing. I'm not impressed with Karif's Zenyatta play. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'd probably go Bedosian as well. With Animo, I think that would be your safe bet there. But I would not be surprised if Karif went in. How crazy is it that we're talking about the South Korean team and it's like, okay, we're looking at 2 New York Excelsior and possibly 1 Vancouver Titan. That seems crazy to me, but it is what it is. But yeah, they literally cannot go wrong with any pick. So we could be completely and utterly wrong. They could come out and just meme all of us and be like, who are your tanks? Choi Hyo-bin and Janu. Who are your supports? Going with Karif and IDK. And they would still win.
Here, Trenchfoot, I'll start out your roster for you, okay? Here we go. Challenge accepted. Make a Korean team made of OWL players that wouldn't be the favorites. Okay, off tank.
Santan.
You were going that way? I was gonna go Salson.
Zephyr.
Yep. Flex support, we're gonna go Guido.
Okay, Guido. Main tank. Who's the scrub from the Justice?
Giannis?
Giannis. Basically, let's just say the Justice.
Half of them are Justice players.
So let's go with the Justice tank line. We'll go with that.
Okay, you got half the team. You gotta come up with the other half, and we'll come back.
I'm trying to think of DPS players. Who would be really bad DPS players? Well, not really bad, but
Well, here, we'll go with someone that isn't flexible. We'll go with the Dora.
Okay, we'll go
that hits close to home.
we'll go with the Dora. I'm thinking of Toronto. You could have Aid be your main support. So we have the main support there. And then is there a trash DPS player on the Mayhem? Like, I actually like BQB and Sire player. Who's their backup DPS in Florida? Whoever that is. If you can't crack the starting roster on the Mayhem, you're not the best. So whoever the backup DPS is for the Mayhem, you're starting. That would be a non-favored team.
And then the coaching would take them to the gold medal.
Yeah.
Knowing our luck. Just because we would shit them. But anyways, let's talk about good players for a change. Let's talk about what Haxel did to the Florida Mayhem and basically literally anyone that stood in front of his path, whether it was on the Dragons or against the Mayhem. So, you know, we were wondering how good is Vancouver going to be in 2-2-2? Turns out, pretty good. They went 3-1 against the Shanghai Dragons. Then they basically decapitated the Florida Mayhem in a 4-0 victory. And, of course, a big part of that was Haxel, who brought out his trademark Genji to the forefront, which really wowed the crowd initially. And then it just got to the point where they were just so used to seeing him murder everything in his path that after each consecutive Dragon Blade, there was less and less hype and reaction from the crowd. It's just like, yeah, we've seen this. Like, we know what's gonna happen. And then it played out from there. So, what did Haxel do, Ed? Well, against the Mayhem, Haxel secured 27 Dragon Blade kills. And if that weren't enough, he also set an Overwatch League record for the most Dragon Blade kills per 10 minutes at 10.9 Dragon Blade kills per 10 minutes. And you know what the damnedest thing about all of this was? The fact that everyone knew what was going to happen. And no one had an answer for it this week. And looking at his stats throughout the two games that the Titans played, going up against the Dragons, Haxel secured 81 eliminations to 28 deaths. And then against the Mayhem, his eliminations went up to 128, and his deaths were down to 21. I don't know about you, Ed, but that's looking pretty good.
Yeah, it's he's decent at the Gengu. You know, it's one of those things where me and you have definitely been talking him up prior to this stage with his, you know, not only his Baguette play, but
top tier Brig.
Yeah, be like, wait till he's off Brig. Like, he is probably one of the most dominant DPS player in the Overwatch League. And during his first game, we were basically in our Discord chat. We were like, just wait for it. And then everyone's like, yeah, no, he's real good. And that wasn't even the Mayhem game. And then the Mayhem game came around, and it's just like, yep, that's what he does. I don't think there's a better Genji in the Overwatch League out there. I think the only one who could probably give him a run for his money would be Prophet.
Mm-hmm.
But that's iffy. But even in this meta where with Genji is not being played all that much, it doesn't matter. He's just
unless you're Haxel.
His Genji play supersedes the meta.
Mm-hmm.
Really, he just has that character who it's kind of like SBB on Tracer. Like stage 4 last year, everyone was running Baguette, and so people stopped running Tracer. Not New York. SBB was still running Tracer because he was just that good at it. this is how Haxel is on Genji. And you saw it in full force. Now, it was against the Mayhem, so it loses a little bit of prestige.
Well, here's the thing, Ed. We're so used to seeing really high McCree play coming in to counter the dive, whether it's Tracer, Sombra, or Genji. And they weren't doing that. Like, there were times when, like, maybe we would see a break come out. That wasn't the answer, but, you know, people were trying to spread out. That didn't really work. He was airblading. He was doing everything and anything in between. But I do feel like, moving forward, it's probably going to find less success against the Chinese teams just because they are more accustomed to primarily running hitscan DPS, more so on McCree compared to some of the other countries out there.
Yeah, and yeah, Genji is the character who, against a good team, can be easily countered. Like, that's just one thing. As good as Genji is, certain comps can just straight up hard counter Genji. Florida is not one of those teams. Shanghai, not Shanghai, but like the Hunters could probably counter him pretty well. Like you said, because they're like, you know, you have the Pharah, you have, they would run Kreese. They run less effective comps.
Yeah, I mean, we did see Sombra coming out against Haxel's Genji, and he was getting hacked, and he was still securing kills, even without the dash.
And we talked a little bit about the Chinese Overwatch World Cup team. Like, they made their comp popular last year. Like, the McCree comps in the Overwatch World Cup that they're running, nobody was running those McCree comps. And here comes China, and they're plowing through things. So they are definitely a team who could shut down, you know, the dive of the, you know, of Haxel and, well, just really Haxel at this point, because you only need him to dive and the team dies. They're just like, crap, here he comes.
Hence the OWL Network title this week, Haxel versus the World. That's what it felt like.
It really was. Like, I can't remember a match this season where one player's
had that much
single
command.
play had that much dominance. There was a few games last year. I remember, obviously, the one with Carpe, where, you know, his Widow play on point, where he's like, I'm gonna 4K the point, 1v4 as Widowmaker and win, you know. But this is probably the most dominant performance we saw season 2, and it was a thing of beauty.
Yeah, go back to watch it from his point of view if you haven't already. You will not be disappointed. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump into this week's esports news. So first up, we got an update on Fusion University. There's some stuff going on. So for starters, let's start with the elephant in the room. Fusion University are at risk of getting relegated. They're still in 6th place right now, but they've only secured 1 win so far. They're 1-4 in their 5 matches, and they have a -6 map differential. The team behind them, Mei-ta Athena, who's in 7th place, are only 1 map away with the same record. So in order to make the playoffs, Fusion University need to finish in that top 6. And unfortunately, earlier today, Fusion University got swept by GC Busan Wave, and that marked the debut of a new main support on this team earlier today. But I want everyone to know, like, they do face Mei-ta Athena for their next match, which is going to be must-win. Like, they need to come in and they need to just dominate Mei-ta Athena, because I know Mei-ta Athena's last match is against WGS, who is currently sitting in 8th place, so that's a soft matchup for them. They should be favored to win that one, but Fusion Uni need to secure this win with as many maps as possible to secure a 6th place bid in the playoffs. Now, that being said, they did sign a new main support, that being none other than Fuse, who was last seen playing for Genji Esports, Esports, which is, the Dynasty Academy team. I know he was released, earlier in the month, and he's technically, the third main support on this roster, if you count Karkar, who is currently on loan to Skyfoxes. Now, what does this mean for Fusion University? Obviously, everyone knows that Elk has basically been, the primary main support on this team. Well, Elk actually took to Twitter saying that he's back in New York. He's taking a few weeks off before he starts to make a stream schedule, but it seems like he is out indefinitely. He basically, the team had said, maybe we're going to go in a different direction, and Elk basically said, he would step away if that's the direction that everyone on the team wanted, and that's the way that things have kind of played out at this point. So, in regards to Elk's status, probably not expecting to see him, for the rest of contenders or at the Gauntlet. As for the Overwatch League, I don't know. I have a feeling he's going to wait out the rest of the season, and then he'll come back for the 2020 season, just based off of how he kind of, wrote things down.
God, it's a screwed up situation. So, Elk went over there because they had no main support, because Karkar couldn't go over there due to him being, I think, underage.
Yeah, he was under 18.
And couldn't be playing in Korea. Some getting visas, whatever, fine. But to hear that some people on the team thought the best direction would be finding a new main support. So essentially the team is blaming Elk for them not performing.
Well, it is worth stating, the primary reason behind this is the fact that Fusion University has been communicating in Korean. Mm-hmm. So that also tells you, Snillo is basically going to be in a similar position as well.
Well, it's not only that, Alarm is gone. Let's just be real. Alarm's 18 now. He will not be back. He will be signed
for the following season,
Yeah. So he'll get signed to a team probably when it becomes, when he can. And then he'll probably play for the contenders team for a little bit while he can. Until the Overwatch League season starts next year.
Mm-hmm.
But so they're going to be losing Elk. They're going to be losing probably Snillo. And they're going to be losing, Alarm. They, three vital pieces to their team out there, and they already only have one win with those three guys on the team. I can't see them improving at this point unless they completely gut their team and start over. So this is a tricky situation. There's probably some behind the scenes stuff that's going on that we just don't know about. But the fact that he's not even getting brought up, because wasn't he still technically on a two-way?
Yeah, he was.
So he's not even joining the Fusion. He could go join the Fusion right now. He's not even doing that. He's setting up a streaming schedule. So he's not even going to go and practice with the Fusion. So are the Fusion just done with him then? Are they just going to release him?
I honestly have no idea.
He'll get picked up like that, I'm
sure he would. At the end of the day, though, when we look back at the decision to move to Korea, I honestly have no problem with it. I appreciate the fact that the team was looking to challenge themselves, because they didn't feel like they were getting that in the expanded North American region, because now Contenders NA is divided in the East and West. Now, I feel like it's better to go out and take a risk than risk becoming too complacent where they were at, because it was pretty obvious, when NA expanded into two different regions. Obviously, that meant that more trials teams were getting called up. But the overall level of play wasn't raising at all. It was still kind of middling out. There's still a lot of movement in, Contenders North America, also Contenders EU. And regardless of what the landscape is in Korea, the level of play is always at the higher level. So if you're talking about like a long-term build-in a team, you're better to do it in that sort of environment than basically like harboring someone in an environment where they can basically just not drop a single map like they had been doing, or just not dropping a series at all for consecutive seasons in a row.
Yeah, and you obviously know more about that whole Korean contenders scene than me, much more so than me. I just don't know what to expect from all this. So it's gonna be a crapshoot. We're gonna have to wait and see. We have to wait. Probably things are probably already in place, but they can't announce it for like 2 more months, and we just don't know.
Yeah, and it's a really odd spot to be into this late into the season when you are literally, I don't want to say grasping for straws, but you're at the end of the rope essentially, since there's no wiggle room at this point. So having to adjust within your final 3 games of the group stage just to try to like cling on to that final playoff spot is not a good spot to be in.
No, and it's a massive change to do. Like, I mean, how many matches do they even have left? Just the one?
There's they play 7 overall.
And they're 1-4, you said, so they have 2 matches left.
Mm-hmm.
So you're basically you're basically switching up your team with 2 games left, hoping for a big change. Well, that's doubtful thinking right there. But Fusion University has, it's not like they're a badly run organization. They've done pretty well for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in FU we trust.
Yeah, their final game is against Element Mystic, which is going to be a tough one too. So all the more reason why they need to get that win over Meta Athena in their next game.
And if they lose that, they're relegated, and then
they're going to dissolve like all the other teams that got relegated. That's how that works. Every time it's happened.
Or they'll come back to NA and be like, "I'm sorry, guys. Will you take me back?"
There was an update on the Academy teams, but we'll go into that next week. Because there was a Contenders update revolving... Well, it wasn't just Contenders, it was the Overwatch League 2020 like roster rules that got released. You can find that stuff on our website or on the Overwatch League website, but we want to save that when we have more time to kind of like deep dive into it, because there are some changes to the way that 2A contracts work, as well as Academy teams. Now, anyways, getting back to the Overwatch League, guys, voting has officially opened for the 2019 Overwatch League MVP. So, going into this, we had the GMs from all 20 teams nominating 5 players who would look to vie for the title of the most valuable player. So the fan votes count towards 25% of the final vote towards the MVP, and the 5 finalists this year has 1 DPS, 1 support, and 3 tanks. So, looking at the final 5, we have Sinatra, obviously DPS, San Francisco Shock. We have Super, the main tank for the Shock. Twilight, flex support for the Vancouver Titans. Janu, flex tank for the Vancouver Titans. And then we have Gushue, main tank for the Hangzhou Spark. Now, voting is set to close when Stage 4 wraps up on August 25th, and in order to cast your vote, you can send out a tweet, just tag the player's Twitter handle, or include the name as well as the hashtag OWLMVP. I also know there's like the Twitch extension that you could just, when you're watching Overwatch League on Twitch, they'll have like a pop-up there, you just click on whoever you want to vote for, and they'll cast your vote. Then throughout this stage, they will be doing the MVP checkpoints, which will basically be a player spotlight, giving you like the stats, and kind of like the journey that like the finalists have been on throughout this season. Now, Ed, I know you and I were flipping back and forth when it came to, like, who we thought would be representing the Titans for the MVP vote. I felt like we both felt pretty good that they would have 2 nominees, and sure enough, they do have 2 nominees in Twilight on Janu. Are you at all surprised that Haxel did not get the nod over one of these 2 options?
Yes, I am surprised Janu was nominated. As good as Janu was, I think Haxel was bigger to the team. I mean, even Seum and Sue probably should have gotten nominated over Janu. I think Twilight was the very obvious choice, but I thought it should have been Twilight and Haxel. I don't think they would have gone 3 people from the Titans. That would have been just insane. But yeah, they went with Janu and Twilight, and yeah, spoiler, I voted for Twilight. Like, because Haxel wasn't. Haxel would have been my...
There was a caveat.
Yeah. Like, Haxel would have gotten my immediate, vote. But, it went to Twilight. Random fact of the day, Janu, the only MVP candidate not to be benched this week. Every other one of them was benched for at least 1 match this week.
Fun facts.
Fun facts. The more you know.
I don't have a sounder ready for that, I'm sorry.
Why not? I didn't tell you about it beforehand, but you should have this stuff on lockdown.
I have, what, I have 3 available sounders in.
And one of them isn't the one you know.
Well, no, they're just named 7, 8, and 9, because I haven't put anything there on the soundboard.
Fine, then. Still, we need to talk about this later, about how we need to add this. It could be a regular segment. The more you know, with Edinar.
Kesha, he's not been on for 171 episodes. FYI.
I've only been on for 71 episodes. Yeah.
See, this is what happens when you come into the episodes late, or later in the series, I should say.
Yep, I was not here for the first 99 episodes. I started on episode 100. Episode 100, Extravaganza.
Complete with jazz hands.
Jazz hands.
Yeah. So you already know I voted for Gooshway. And if Haxel was on it, he 100% would have been my primary vote. I really think, like, the only one I wouldn't vote for would probably be Super, and probably Janu I would put in there, too. It's really between Twilight, Sinatra, and Gooshway for me. Like, if we're talking about, like, who really deserves it. But, the thing is, too, it's like, they nominate people based off of the first half of the season, and there's part of me that just gets kind of bugged by that, because you're not seeing, like, the full scope of the Overwatch League. Because, obviously, what we saw in Stage 1 and Stage 2 isn't necessarily going to translate for all of these players over to Stage 3 and Stage 4, given the meta shift, given the fact that some of them could get benched throughout the majority of 2-2-2, for that matter. Potentially, Sinatra being the likeliest of those.
Yeah, I guess. So I listened to you and Spider talk about this yesterday. The playoffs 100% cannot be included in this. Because you're saying the only way you can be an MVP is if your team's a playoff contender.
Right.
So you can include that. But you want it to conclude by the end of the stage. Because you don't want the playoffs impacting the votes. So you almost have to start it in the middle of, the last stage. They probably could have waited, 2 weeks, but you can't start the voting in the playoffs, because then obviously the team that's doing best, those players will get the most votes just because they're the team at that moment who's doing the best. Well, it will influence them.
We weren't talking about starting it at the playoffs. It's just the fact that they started it only with the first half. Like, if they would have started it, like, at the end of, like, Stage 3, because at that point you're basically seeing the start and the finish of an entire meta, so to speak.
Yes. If they would have started I agree they should have probably waited to gather the top 5 or get the fan votes and stuff like that. Start that at the end of stage 3, compile all the data for like 2 weeks, and then week 2 of the last stage. That's when you bring up like the MVP voting for the last 4 weeks of the stage, and then they'll have the MVP. You just announce it in the playoffs.
Right.
Like, that is what they probably should have done. They're just like a week or 2 in my opinion. But it can't go past the end of this stage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it can't bleed into the playoffs.
Right.
And there's no organization that ever takes playoffs into account for MVP voting, because it's just unfair. So, I get where you're coming from. But it's just they probably just released about a week or too early.
Yep, so looking at the China scene, at least for the Overwatch League, we got a couple of updates from the Hanzhou Spark and the Chengdu Hunter. So first up, with the Spark, there's some stuff going on with Crystal over the past couple of weeks. So disciplinary action has been taken towards Spark DPS Crystal after he failed to return to the team following a 10-day leave of absence. Now, Crystal had left due to a family illness, and he was expected to return to the team on July 15th. Now, the team had said that over the past week and a half that they hadn't had a request from Crystal for an extension of his leave, and the Spark, basically, they went out and they released like this statement over on Twitter, saying that they had gravely warned Crystal, and he would be fined 3 times for his salary of the absent days that he did not have permission for. And of course, we kind of got like a follow-up from Crystal, who kind of like replied to the tweet, or like he quote tweeted it. I can't remember how exactly he did it, but he basically said like he had applied for his visa, and that was kind of delayed, and it wasn't approved until July 22nd. And then, of course, there was like a follow-up tweet from the Spark after they lost, which has kind of like split a lot of the community, because like they basically kind of like threw Crystal under the bus, so to speak, because like he wasn't there for scrims, so they were kind of like somewhat blaming him for their loss. But it's important to note that regardless of everything going on with Crystal and the Spark right now, the Spark did recall both No Smite and Bazzy back, who were both working with their academy team. Both of them were on 2-way contracts, so with or without Crystal, they at least have another flex DPS option in Bazzy, because, looking back at this last week, Adora definitely made him a pretty one-dimensional compared to the looks that we're used to seeing from the Spark. And it's kind of troubling to see the Spark look that way when they've been one of the more consistent teams here within the past stage.
Yeah, it's a screwed up situation. I want to say this about the whole Crystal shenanigans that occurred. What the Spark did at the beginning is I am totally okay with. They couldn't get a hold of Crystal. Crystal wasn't calling them. They took it public, saying, he has not been in contact with the team. He's been gone too long. Here's his punishments. He needs to reach out to us. He reached out to them. Maybe not in the right way through Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
He probably talked to them in person after that. I would assume they had some conversation back and forth after that situation. And the issue really should have been dead at that. It 100% should have been dead. You publicly scolded him. You fined him. Now, after you did all of that, you publicly shamed him. Like, you publicly humiliated him, fined him, and then we're just beating it down after the fact. That is the definition of a bully. Like, I don't want to get like too riled up about this, but they were being a bully to Crystal. Like, right now, like before they released that second tweet being like, Check mark. Crystal, our DPS, doesn't come to scrims. Check mark. We lose the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, now you're just throwing your own player under the bus and to the wolves. Like, what the Spark did was just shit. Like, it was bad. It was bad of them. It was a bad PR move. Everything about that, the person who sent that tweet needed to be scolded. Like, that is the type of tweet that we expect from our commander-in-chief. Not from an Overwatch League team. Like, putting it out there like that. Like, it was stupid. Now, with that being said, I hope that the team and Crystal can come to an agreement after this. Things can get worked out. But if I was Crystal, I don't know if I'd want to come back to the team. Like, I don't know if I'd want to come back to the team that, you know, just went to Twitter to call me out and say, I'm fine. You could probably get past that. But then afterwards, and after a loss, publicly, like, shame him for their loss. When it wasn't his fault.
Yeah, and when you look back at that follow-up tweet that the Spark sent, most of the comments, at least from the fans, was like mostly revolving around the reason behind the leave of absence in the first place. Because normally, like, if something's going on, you're obviously going to be distracted.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand that Crystal is at an age where maybe he doesn't have a full grasp of, like, the corporate side of things and how all of that plays out. But when you're dealing with, like, personal stuff, obviously, like, that's the furthest thing from your mind. So, like, in that case, I would not come down on him that hard. Like, I feel like the initial tweet, yeah, that was nothing. But it felt weird and kind of just, I don't know how I would describe the follow-up. Like, it didn't sit well with me. I definitely would not send something like that. Like, sure, like, you could, like, it didn't come across as, like, just poking fun, you know, which can happen from time to time when it comes to, like, the social media, like, because that's how a lot of the barbs are between the Overwatch League teams, but it didn't come across that way. And at the end of the day, when you look back at how the Spark has handled their social media, outside of translations, which I'm not even going to get into, for the most part, the Spark have been one of the better managed, like, social media teams out there. So it almost felt out of character, based off of what we have seen from them in the past.
Yeah, it just, the person who sent it out probably was reading it and thought, oh, this is going to be hilarious, without realizing that, oh, yeah, no, this is a bad move. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if Crystal comes back and actually plays. We don't know. I'm betting that Crystal does not come back to the Hanzo Spark for the rest of this stage. Probably
go
the
sign
playoffs as well.
Go sign with Guancho.
Yes.
Because I can tell you one thing. He's probably not going to sign with Chengdu based off of the signing? Air quotes?
The signing?
The dibs for 2020, essentially.
Yes.
So basically, the Chengdu Hunters, they go out and they send out a tweet of their own. No, they weren't shaming any of their players or anything like that. They're basically like, you know what, guys? Like, we have someone on our mind. We're gonna put him on a talent contract. Kind of like what with, like, New York Excelsior did with Flower back when they basically acquired Luxury Watch. Way back when. But basically, like, Chengdu Hunters, they're looking ahead to next year, and they're turning to the DPS player Leaf, who is on the Chinese Overwatch World Cup team. Thing is, Leaf won't be eligible to officially sign until next year due to the league age restrictions, as he is 17. So, looking back, Leaf began his career back in 2016. He's been on the World Cup team for China the past 2 years. He was on Miraculous Youngster, who, of course, were the team that were crushing that region before Overwatch League began, and then everyone was pissed off at the fact that Shanghai Dragons wasn't majority Miraculous Youngster. Those were good times. But basically, Hunter said, like, he's joined the Hunters organization as a contracted talent for now, and we hope to sign him as a player for the 2020 season as soon as we are permitted under Overwatch League rules. So it's an announcement of someone that they hope to announce as a sign-in for 2020. And, there's things like this are just like, why? Like, obviously, like, I don't know if there's, like, hush money or anything like that. Like, who knows?
Here's the thing about it. Leave has not, outside of playing for the World Cup team last year, dude hasn't played in, like, 2 years. Because he didn't play in Contenders this year. He sat out last year in 2018 with Miraculous Youngsters. So, like, he hasn't played outside of the World Cup. He hasn't played organized Overwatch in, like, 2 years.
Ed, that's kind of like the Hunters' MO.
Like, what are they?
Because they have the other MY players on that roster.
Like, do they have a secret underground bunker that these people are just, like, playing
Their
Overwatch
scrimmage,
secretly, and no one's allowed to know it? It's like the Monstars from Space Jam. Like, just came out of nowhere. I got a Space Jam reference in this episode. Monstars. But, like, Leave, if you remember, like, he may not be a household name. And we have seen very little of him. Like we said, we've seen very little of him. But when we saw Leave in the Overwatch World Cup last year, I was impressed.
Mm-hmm.
His McCree play was legit. Like, Leave and Gooshway were like, all right, this China team might be for real. And they were. And now
until they met South Korea.
Yeah, until they met South Korea. That's besides the point.
But they swept everyone else.
Yes. But when we went back and looked, only 2 teams were not swept. United States, they won 1 map. And then I think UK versus Canada were the only games that didn't end in, like, 3-0 or 4.
Are we okay, hold on. Before we talk about that, are we gonna get into this whole sweep conversation again that we had in the past? When the UK drew a map against South Korea?
It was a sweep by South Korea. A tie is not a win.
It's also not a loss.
But it's not a win. They did not win against them. It was a sweep.
I know, it's just weird because, like, we can't really apply that to other sports. I think it's the real thing. Like, we don't have anything else to compare it to.
Because there's no real
Because it's just a unique... Yeah, like, it's just a unique thing to esports. I just want to know, like, how many people actually classify that
it's like
as a sweep, or if it's just a majority win, so to speak.
Or is it what's not, like... I'm trying to think of it in between, like, a sweep and, like, a 3-1. Would it be, like...
a unanimous win? Are we gonna do MMA
like,
terms?
It's kind of like, a dusting. Could it be dusting? We need some sort of cleaning reference to go with this.
I think that would work.
A dusting. So, all right. So we're both technically right. But no, Leave is good. We will see him on the Hunters. I'm gonna bring it up, and it is rumors, legit rumors, but it came from the Chinese Overwatch World Cup head coach, saying that 4 of the Hunters players expressed interest in retiring at the end of the year.
Now, I wonder how many of those were former Miraculous Youngster players who hadn't been playing full-time.
Yeah. So, the Hunters, as we know them...
Gonna look completely different.
Completely different team. Completely different. So, Leave could be the star of this team.
Mm-hmm.
when he joins, he still could be the star of this team. But the Hunters are in a weird place right now. That coming out from the Overwatch World Cup, general manager is not the best thing for the Chengdu Hunters right now, because that's all people are going to be asking them about. But it was funny when they announced the signing of Leave.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're signing Leave, and then the follow-up tweet, we like, clarification, he's not allowed to sign. He's just with the organization. He's not an Overwatch League contract at this point.
Yeah.
So
rules? What rules?
yeah, what rules? And like the thing is he's turning 18 like 3 weeks before the Overwatch World Cup, because his birthday's in October. So it's like just got in there, because you now have to be 18 to play in the Overwatch World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's an interesting time to be a Hunters fan. We'll just go with that.
Yeah. But yeah, like I'm just curious to see, like, let's say these 4 or 5 players end up exiting, like I'm curious to see who the Hunters would pull from at that point, or if they're gonna like kind of like pick and choose from various Chinese contenders team. But we'll have to wait and see how much water that holds moving forward. But anyways, let's talk about the week that was in the Overwatch League, as we had the debut of Rollock in OWL. And I don't know about you, Ed, but like I know we were kind of like talking about like what we were expecting to see. And, there were some things that we were pretty spot on, and then other things that we were just, like, so far on the opposite spectrum of. So, in regards to things that we got right, well, we did see a lot of Orisa, we saw a lot of Roadhog, we saw a lot of Double Sniper.
Mm-hmm.
What we did not expect to see is pretty much dead-on an even split of playtime and pick rate between the off-tanks, whether it was D.Va or Roadhog. I thought for sure there was going to be a lot of the pulled pork combination. It was actually not the case. It was very intriguing to see like what teams were favoring running the Roadhog, what teams were favoring running the D.Va, and we also didn't really get to see a lot of these players coming in and playing something that is not their primary role outside of, like, hydration for the LA Gladiators, who was coming in to play Wrecking Ball. It was actually paired with Void for the Gladiators at times this past week, which was very intriguing as well. So, kind of looking back, what were some of, like, the biggest surprises to you that we got to see out of this meta that is starting to evolve and develop early on?
Well, I think you nailed one of the first ones right away with D.Va. Like, we saw D.Va actually increase in pick rate. D.Va...
There is a caveat to that. And that's primarily because, looking back, when a lot of teams were running Countdown, which was the 3 DPS solo tank to support, D.Va was always the one getting substituted out for the Sombra. So, while yes, D.Va did see more playtime, it's in actuality not as big of a differential as what the stats would show, because you're basically completely cutting off that third DPS option.
Yeah. But there's 3 other picks that kind of surprised me. The first one is the obvious one, Mei. I think we talked about this last week, how we heard rumblings that Mei could be important, but we did not, I don't think either one of us expected Mei to be the the highest picked DPS hero.
Mm-hmm.
At 40% of the time, Mei was picked. Like, neither one of us saw that coming. So that's kind of crazy. It's nice. She's the flippin' Antichrist, and I hope she burns in hell. But, it's nice to see something different. The other 2 changes was, 1, Reaper. I did not expect to see so much Reaper play.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't even like, he was played more than Tracer, Genji, McCree, Pharah. That's insane. Like, I did not see Reaper coming up that much. The other one is actually not DPS. It's a support, Baptiste. The Ryzen Baptiste, because because you have like people have that mindset. If you have an Orisa, that you're just going to be running a lot of bunker comps, and we didn't see as many bunker comps as a lot of people.
No, we saw like Clockwork Vendetta a couple of times, but it was very minuscule compared to the other team comps that we were seeing.
Yeah, like, all right, so Bastion and Torbjorn both were picked under 1%. Like, they were basically bottom 5 of the picked heroes this week. Like, so bunker comp wasn't a thing, and you still saw Baptiste get played. So that was really nice to see. I do like a good Baptiste player. So those were the 3 that really stuck out to me. A lot of people are talking about the Pharah, the massive drop in Pharah, but I'm just like, we expected dual sniper. Snipers are a hard counter to Pharah.
Yeah, and when we're talking about that too, it's not just the fact that it's the counter, but the crossfire is a lot more potent with double sniper than it is with the Widow Pharah as well.
Yeah, so the only one who was really using Pharah was Ding. And, well, he did real good on it. We'll just go with that. But not many people were using Pharah plays. So, what surprised you the most outside of the D.Va Roadhog thing?
Like, for me, it was primarily the bigger uptick in Hanzo. Like, I was curious to see, like, how teams were going to go about bursting shields. And, you know, the Storm Arrows are actually pretty good at that, so Hanzo has seen an uptick of 25.8%, more so than, like, what we saw out of Roadhog. Was more surprising, because we'd already started to see more teams experimenting with Roadhog in the prior week, but we didn't really get to see a whole lot of teams playing Hanzo. But, you know, it is worth noting that the Halt does set up, like, the Dragon Strikes really good. And, you know, London was always kind of, like, at the forefront of that this past season, which is why one of the reasons why a lot of us are expecting some better things from London Spitfire moving forward. Now...
Just don't play guard. For the love of God, London, don't play guard.
Yeah, they're trying different things, but yeah, I prefer to see Bird Rain in.
Well, the thing is, with guard coming in, you know exactly what he's going to be doing.
Right.
You're just going to be like, guard's in. They're playing Sombra. All right, let's counter that, and we win. So, yeah, bring in Bird Ring. Be gone with you, guard.
So I was not surprised to see 4 of the top 5 heroes that dropped the most this week being components of the 3-3 meta. So that includes, like, Brig, who was at minus 49.9% this past week. Zarya was minus 34.4%. Lucio was minus 33.7%. And then Reinhardt was minus 29.2%. Now, that being said, Ed, yes, we did see a huge decrease in regards to Brigitte play, but we did actually still see some Brigitte, which I thought was interesting, and that was primarily trying to deal with dive compositions, and lo and behold, in her current iteration, it is not enough. Like, you just get the dive would come in, you know, you try to land a shield bash, but the damage output is just too much, and you don't have the heal and sustain just with an Ana on the field. And at that point, basically everyone just abandoned Brigitte at that point, which I'm not surprised by, but it was weird. Like, I for sure thought, like, that was going to be the end of Brig. It was just going to flatline. And that was not actually the case.
Brig right now, without her buffs, is legit useless. Like, you're bringing her in for one reason and one reason only, and that's shield bash to stop a dive. Nothing else. She doesn't really provide anything. With one other support. So I'm surprised she was played above 2% of the time.
And you also don't have just the amount of pressure on the front line where you're able to just flail away to your heart's content.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it confused me that she was played as much, but like I think a lot of people were just getting run over. Like in the Mayhem's case, they were just getting run over, and they just went to a panic pick. Like, what can stop a Genji from ulting on us? If we shield bash him, he'll kill one less person. Like, obviously that's not the case because Axel still gets 4 or 5k kills and shield bashed. But don't play her. Just don't. Let her die. I wish D.Va would fall down more, though. But I've been a big proponent of D.Va not being in the meta.
Well, that's the thing, too. Like, there seems to be a pretty even split between what you want to go for. So you're either looking for the pick potential with the Roadhog, who also does give you, like, extra, like, shield burst. Or you're looking at your D.Va to get more utilization out of defense matrix, whether it's to eat Blizzard, which we saw is very easy to do. Like, there were a lot of defense matrix soaking in the Blizzards this past week, just because there is a cast time to it. A lot easier to eat than, like, the Crocodile Surges in the past. Or, you're also looking to defense matrix a halt coming in from the Orisa as well. So it's a pretty even split. I feel like that trend is going to continue, where one of them is not going to be the favored option. Now that being said, something that's worth noting too is this past week we got to see a lot of different substitutions that we're just normally not used to seeing. So as I mentioned, like Hydration was coming in and playing Wrecking Ball for the Gladiators. The Charge got so far ahead in one of their series that they opted to basically swap out their team for their B team. And we saw Fraggy and Bishu coming on stage. And, they didn't have the smoothest map win, but they got the job done. Charge got the sweep. And just seeing Bishu and Fraggy just light up on stage like that was just the most wholesome thing this past week.
That was actually amazing when they brought them out. I'm glad they were able to do that. One thing I want to say about the D.Va Roadhog thing is, do you think that we might see actually a decline in D.Va play once the off tanks start to play Roadhog better? Like, I feel like a lot of the D.Va play was they may not just be there
based on comfort
Roadhog yet. Yeah. Like, they're just like, well, we know Roadhog's probably better in this situation with the Orisa, but, like, for instance, Space, he's better on D.Va than Roadhog. Like, he's probably going to play more D.Va than same with probably Fury and so on and so forth. They're playing it out of comfort, and then, like, you get a lot of these D.Va one tricks who are kind of coming in and being forced to play non-D.Va roles. Like, you saw that with Spree on the Outlaws, and his Roadhog was not amazing, but it's not what he's known for and what he's basically on the team for, and that's to play D.Va.
Right. I'll have to go back and see in how many situations it was primarily with the Orisa Mei opposition, as opposed to a different team comp. I want to see if there's any correlation between the two, of like when D.Va was used over Roadhog, and go from there at that point. I mean, it could be a comfort thing, just because more times than not it was either the flex support moving over to the Roadhog, because it was solo support at the time, or, there are DPS players that do primarily run the Roadhog as well. It's definitely something to keep an eye on, but for me, I just want to see Hoxel keep playing a Genji until someone can come up with an answer. I don't know if there's going to be diminishing returns. All I know is I just love watching Genji play.
Oh my god, we got to see coming into this year, I've been very vocal about my boy Decay and how amazing he is. And he actually proved it this week. He out-tracered SBB. Like, he was just so good. But Haxel, like, I knew he coming in that he was a good DPS. I didn't know how good. Like, Decay and Haxel are just, they're a thing of beauty to watch. And I just could watch them if they're ever. That's why I want them on the Korean World Cup team. Is I just want to see those two play together, and then just be like, well, you know what, the rest of you can have the night off, because we're just gonna destroy. I mean, if you can run dive with Decay and Haxel on Genji and Tracer, you're gonna do just fine. So, but yeah, I agree. Haxel, like, as long as we get to see Haxel playing Genji, Decay playing really whatever, it's going to be a good 2-2-2 stage.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to touch on was with Philadelphia, who, like, we probably expected more, at least this past week with the introduction of 2-2-2. Now, that being said, they did go to Map 5 in both of their series, so it's not like it's a one-sided affair by any means, so they're still in the thick of things there. But we saw a lot of, I don't want to say overlap, but there were a lot of situations when Carpe and EQO would be flexing to similar heroes. So, like, there'd be times when, like, Carpe was on Widow, and then EQO was on Hanzo, and then Carpe would swap to something, and then EQO would go back to whatever Carpe was running prior. Like, do you think that's just, like, indecision, or do you feel like they're, like, those players are good enough to just basically, like, play whatever, even though there is a little bit of overlap there? Because, like, to me, like, I didn't quite know what to make of that, because we're so used to seeing players on set roles, but it just seemed to really not flow right for whatever reason.
Like, I touched on this a bit last night on OWO by the numbers. The Philadelphia Fusions, the players look like they've just given. Like, they just look defeated. And it shows in their play. Like, yeah, they're switching all these random switches between heroes, so on and so forth. I think it's indecisiveness. None of them really being all in. I think, like, you know, Carpe and EQO, I think all in. I think Sato has given up. Poco tries to lighten things up, but it just doesn't work. It's just they are looking forward to season 3 at this point. They might make the playoffs, the play-in for the playoffs, but if they, at this rate, probably not.
Yeah, right now they are 9th overall.
They're 9th, but they're not playing like they're going to stay there. Like, I could see them falling out of the top 12. You know, it's sad. This should have been their time to shine, but stage 1, 2, and 3 were just such ass whoopings that they just got defeated. And they need something to invigorate them. You know, what if that's Kim coming in?
Right.
Like, the one thing I've learned from stage 2 is don't count on any single player being on the roster in a map. There's no one that is safe. Like, no one. Like, it kind of came up when we were talking about MVPs. 4 of the 5 MVP candidates were benched at one point. Twilight didn't play an entire series. Like,
yeah, when I played
Twilight, Twilight is like, if you would have told me at the start, like, oh yeah, no, Twilight's not gonna play. You're like, wait, what? Say what now?
It's kind of like even the same thing with, like, Shanghai coming out the first night and starting Izayaki right away over Luffy.
Exactly. You know, so you have all these people who could, so don't rule out them benching EQO or benching Carpe for a couple maps and trying to invigorate the team. You know, because sometimes new blood will invigorate a team. Perfect example.
Competition is always good.
A perfect example. Look at one of the top 6-7 teams in the league right now. The Guangzhou Charge. Yes.
That's a weird thing to say, right. I know.
It's weird. But, like, they brought in Nero full time. And Nero, I think Nero has been playing out of his mind and has kind of invigorated the team.
Yeah, he was a. I will say, like, out of the faces that we don't see a whole lot, he was definitely the breakout this past week.
Yes.
Obviously, Hoxel had a lot of the glory, but Nero had just as much impact.
Yeah, I think Nero and Elsa were the two that surprised me the most. Because, well, we never really saw anything from the off-tank perspective of Chengdu. So it's like, oh, you have an off-tank? You know what that means? Like, but yeah, so don't expect anyone to start. I mean, Super and Sinatra and Rascal were benched for the first map. Who would have thought that would have happened? Like, it's just one of those things now while we work out 2-2-2. Like, Hooray is looking like a monster. And nobody predicted that Hooray would even get playtime for the Vancouver Titans.
Yeah, I thought they'd keep Raiden Stitch there, but no, they brought in Hooray to play Widow.
But are you confident in Hooray playing the next match? Nope.
I mean, I'm confident that he'll pop off if he plays the next match.
Yes, but you don't know if he's going to play at all. Like, if they're like, oh yeah, we're going to play Stitch this week, you'd be like, okay.
I mean, if I were to guess based off of the Widow pick rate, my confidence, I would say, is like 85%. He starts.
I mean, you would think so, but then what brought the decision to not play Twilight in and have Rappel play the same heroes that Twilight plays? Like, it's one of those things where you just don't know. So
yeah, I mean, we're just so used to seeing it being like garbage time, like with what the Charge did.
Yeah.
As opposed to like a whole series.
Yeah, like, you gotta also think that if they're gonna be making this fantasy thing a reality, then people will need to, the teams will need to release lineups beforehand, which is something I think that will become mandatory at next stage, or next season. Dang it.
Well, I mean, that technically would be the next stage.
So
Technicalities.
I do not have to drink for that one. But you know what I mean? Like, because right now, fantasy is just, it's getting decimated because of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so just for example, like looking back at our private league that we did for OWL by the numbers, like I know, you started Twilight, who, didn't play that one game. And I started 2 people who only played one map. And my points, despite having 6 people that did play, some maps across the board had a lot less points than yours, even with 5 players that played every map.
Yep.
And, it just comes to show, like, one day the Dragons ran DM and Dane, and then they brought in Yunjin over DM, and I was like, oh, well, this is it.
Yeah, it's and Brandis is gonna hold this over my head that he beat me, but like, he did technically beat me because Twilight didn't play.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is what it is. That's the only reason. If it wasn't just Twilight, like you said, it was also DM. It was Swan playing instead of Fate.
Right.
Yeah, you had Izzyaki one day, Luffy the next. Like, it's just the inconsistencies. Now, I get map switches, that's going to happen, but completely taking someone out of the lineup, like, you should at least have to name your starting lineup beforehand. Make switches after that. That's part of the game.
I mean, I will
have a starting lineup.
If I had to guess, I would say on average, there's 4 or 5 teams that do it on a semi-regular basis.
Seoul,
Boston.
Boston useless.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they did it this week.
I don't know. Those are the first three that come to mind, at least.
Because AimGod didn't play.
New York is another one that typically does it.
Yeah. I think every team should be required to at least release a starting lineup. Every other organization, or NFL, MLB, stuff like that, releases starting lineups beforehand. And they do give there can be injuries, there can be sicknesses that last minute somebody has to pull up. That happens. But at least release a starting lineup.
Yeah, I mean, someone could be in the bathroom for too long. We've seen that happen too.
Yes, or someone could be left in for an extra series when they shouldn't have been, like this past.
And then it works out, and then they just stick with it because it's working. So yeah, that's the Outlaws for the week, guys. Oh yeah, we just left Dante out there. Oh, he's not supposed to be out there. Oh, we won that map. Cool. All right, let's leave him out there.
Well, let's just leave him.
Yeah.
All right. Sure. That works for me.
So it comes to show, guys, the secret to Outlaw success is to just go all willy-nilly. There's no rhyme or reason. Substitutions.
Coaches don't know what's going
to
happen.
What are those?
Yeah, coaches are just like the coaches were probably in the bathroom, and Dante's like, I think they said it's my time to go out there. I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna sub myself in.
There you go. That's how they win. Purely coincidental.
Like, he walks on stage and he's just like, I'm coming in for you, and just points at a random person.
And that's why they sold for $40 million.
Yeah. Houston. To somebody in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. As much as I want a Chicago team, I do not want to cheer for Rockets or Jake.
It's a $40 million coincidence.
Yes.
That's how it happens. But anyways, let's take a look at Stage 4 Week 2. So on Thursday, we got Charge versus Spitfire, Mayhem versus Justice. Oh yeah, two-thirds of the Spotlight Trio. That's a 20 team versus a Rank 19 team, guys. Then we have the Dragons versus Defiant, and then the Valiant versus the Dynasty. Alright, Ed. I know we always meme the Mayhem and the Justice. But I don't know about you, but I feel like this is going to be a shellacking. I feel like the Mayhem are just going to get crushed by the Justice in 2-2-2. You're muted.
Once an episode. I do it once an episode. All right. As you can see from our power rankings, we do not have the Justice at a bottom 2 team.
We don't.
And this is a first. And there's a reason for that. They actually don't, I'm not going to say they look good.
The reason for it is gory.
Yeah, they don't look bad. Sleepy has done fine. Otto, fine. And, Otto's been fine. Corey has been playing very well. But he's playing Widowmaker, which is what he's meant to be on. They still have trash tier tank line. And that will not change this stage.
Yeah,
sadly.
So for those that missed that, I reported on this earlier on our website. Visa applications for the Team Envy duo of LD Vote and Lolsish, they're not going to get their visas in time before the stage ends. So unfortunately, Washington Justice are not going to see that Swedish tank duo come into play this year, which sucks. I really wanted to see them play. I felt super confident that Justice would go 4-3 with the schedule that they have, because it's not a necessarily hard schedule. I'm still sticking with my guts and saying that they'll finish 4-3. It's just be a little bit harder now, but
yeah, I think they'll go 4-3 as well, because they're playing some real bad teams,
like the Mayhem.
Yeah, they're playing the Mayhem. They're playing Boston. They're playing, and then all they have to do is win one of 3 games versus the Outlaws, Paris, or Atlanta. None of those 3 are top 10 teams.
I would favor two of those teams over Washington. Houston's kind of a toss-up.
Yeah. So they just need to win one of those three matchups to go 4-3.
Mm-hmm.
I think. So, yeah, that's very plausible that they go, go 4-3. But they legit look better. Like, if they had their new tank lineup, I would probably venture a guess that right now they would probably be like 12 to 14 range in the power rankings if they had the new tank lineup. That's how well the rest of the team is playing. And I'm saying that like 12 through 14 is not great. But when you are...
when you've been 19th.
20th for the entire season, 12-14 is a massive upgrade. So, yeah, I completely see a Justice stomp in this one as well.
Yeah, so across the board, like, the Charge Spitfire to me is a toss-up. Like, I feel like Charge do have a hot hand.
Yeah, it's a 50-50.
For me, it's more of a matter of what the Spitfire are going to do with the DPS lineup. If they're playing guard, I'm not going to feel as confident. If they play guard, I'm expecting Charge to win. If they don't, I'm expecting Spitfire to win. But, like, that would go either way, but, like, Charge right now are looking really good. I can't remember where we have them in our rankings, like, for our average, but I know a lot of us had them, like, 7th or 8th overall. Like, they're looking pretty good in 2-2-2. And Happy and Nero collectively just...
We had them at 8.
Okay, I don't want to say, like, they came out of nowhere, but Nero just came in and just started taking names. So, I'm expecting, like, if I'm doing pick'ems, like, I'm gut-checking gonna say Spitfire out of the gate. Justice, Dragons over Defiant. I'm expecting the Valiant to beat the Dynasty, which is gonna suck for the Dynasty, because they're still trying to figure their stuff out, now that, Munchkin is officially... I mean, he was already technically out for the remainder of the stage, but he's no longer with the team at this point, so we'll see where he ends up next year.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat as you. The Charge, Spitfire, coin flip, Dragons over Defiant. Valiant versus Dynasty is kind of like the battle of somebody do something. Like... we don't know if the Valiant or Dynasty are a really good team in 2-2-2 or if they're a crap team in 2-2-2. Like,
yeah, Dynasty have, like, a good map differential, but if they don't win, they can lose ground very quickly.
Yeah, it's like Valiant won last week, but they won 3-2 versus Paris. So it's like...
actually looked pretty decent. I don't want to say pretty good, but, like, they looked better than what we were anticipating.
Exactly. So it's like neither the Valiant or the Soul Dynasty are playing to what they were in Stage 3. So obviously 2-2-2 has hit them pretty hard. Just in their play style. Mm-hmm. And, this is going to be a battle of one of you has to actually step up and do something. Soul Dynasty probably really missing Fissure at this point. Because, well, a good Winston in this meta might not be the worst thing. But, yeah, Soul is... who knows what's going to happen with them. I messaged you this, and this is not something that could happen this stage. As Stryker said on stream that he wants Off the Shock to be traded to the Dynasty.
Really?
Yeah. Like, said it on stream.
I would love that.
Like... he was playing with Hiley, and he said he wants Off the Shock, and he wants to be traded to the Dynasty. Because he's just not playing, because he's hit the title of his stream.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
I'm back to being a bench player.
Mm-hmm.
So he probably will not be with the team after this stage, and he would fit real well on Soul.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, too. Like, Like, I was glad he got out of Boston, but then he just goes to an overloaded Shock DPS core. And there's a lot of overlap there. But moving into Friday, we have Excelsior versus Eternal, Outlaws versus Fusion, Hunters versus Gladiators, and then Charge versus Spark. Alright, so NYXL, interesting situation this past week. Eternal looked better. I don't know if Excelsior's stock has dropped enough where I would favor Eternal yet. Soon was popping off, though. I was happy to see Soon coming back to form. It's just a matter of how well can Shadowburn hold on Mei. Because that's a big question mark still. I would say NYXL should still be able to take that. Outlaws versus Fusion, I'm very uncertain on, just because both of those teams are marred with inconsistencies. You know, like, do we favor the negative kind of like attitude that we're seeing from the Fusion on stage, or do we hope that the Outlaws are gonna somehow misstep into a win? I don't know how else to describe the Outlaws. Hunters Gladiators is very intriguing to me. Like, the Hunters looked pretty good in 2-2-2, and then the Gladiators were very polarizing this past week.
Yes.
Like, which Gladiators are going to show up this week? Like, I don't know. Like, I want to say Gladiators take that one, and then the Hunters upset the Excelsior on Sunday. Would probably be what I would go with.
Yeah, like, Friday is just one of those, every matchup, there's no juggernaut matches on Friday, but every single match is like I wouldn't be surprised if there was an upset.
Right.
Like you talked about Paris, like Soon popped off. Soon 100% popped off. But you know who else popped off probably more than Soon? Finzi.
Mm-hmm.
Finzi's Roadhog. Like, nobody was talking about Finzi's Roadhog. And then Finzi came around with his Roadhog, and we're like, ooh, you're pretty good at that thing. Like, so Finzi really did well, but I agree, New York is probably still going to win this one. Fusion Outlaws has Map 5 written all over it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving the edge to the Outlaws on this one because the Outlaws have to win this match. If they lose this match, their playoff hopes are basically shot.
Yeah, looking at, like, I wrote down, like, where everyone's sitting at in the standings. That one, Outlaws are currently at 15th, Fusion are in 9th.
Yeah, and, like, it's not like a whole lot is separating all of them.
No.
It's just Houston doesn't have a good map differential. So, like, if they lose, so they don't gain a game, but they still have that crappy map differential, they're not technically eliminated, but they're... The Hunters versus Gladiators, before the Outlaw match last week, I would have thought this would have been a cakewalk win for the Gladiators. I just don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen. So if I'd had to guess, I'd say Gladiators win this one. And then I'm picking the Charge. I think the Charge are going to beat the Spark on this one.
Yeah, with the Spark, I want to see if they just play Bozzy over Adora this week. Because that's going to be their more flexible DPS option out of the core that they have. So I'd feel a lot more confident in that case with the Spark. But, like, you're still only talking about, like, limited scrim time as well, since Bazzy and Nose might have been over with their academy team. So, like, I'm still going to lean towards the Charge in that case. But that should be a pretty good series based on what we have seen from them. And in regards to, like, the whole overlap with Fleta, it's important to note, like, Fleta is someone that not only plays hit scan, but he also plays projectile. So in more situations, Fleta would actually be projectile, should Striker move over.
Yeah, Fleta on Widow, Striker on Tracer.
That could work too.
That I would not be afraid. I would not be worried about the Dynasty if they ran that.
So moving into Saturday, we have Rain versus Eternal, Mayhem versus the Spitfire, Fuel versus Valiant, and Gladiators versus Shock. So we have, like, 3 games there that are pretty close in stand-ins, so that basically excludes Mayhem versus Spitfire, because it's the 20th ranked team against the 5th ranked team, so pretty high implications in regards to those ones. You know, the Fuel are just... I'm trying to think how I should describe the Fuel at this point. Like, it really feels like their season is over at this point. Like, it's very hard to find a lot to confide in with the Fuel right now. Like, I know there's been a lot of discussion about, whether or not they should be moving Taimu in. I mean, Taimu is a very streaky player. There's been a lot of talk about Zachary being a big issue with the team. There's been a lot of swaps on main tank between OGE and Trill. And the Valiant, despite a rough start to their season, they've really started to turn things around. And I would not be surprised if the Valiant end up finishing, in the top 10 towards the end of the season. But I feel like the Valiant win that. Paris Atlanta's a curious one. I think I would give the edge to Paris in this meta. And it's primarily just due to the fact that Atlanta tends to shift things around more often. And I don't know if that's going to lead to inconsistency issues, throughout the stage. Because, we kind of saw, Enlar come in. We saw Baby Bay at times. But they haven't always been playing throughout the entirety of the series. And, Eternal have been grossly underrated, I feel like, throughout the season. Even going back to when they were primarily running DPS before 3-3, when they were kind of below average at that point. But Shock Gladiators... Gladiators are probably going to lose that one. It's a rough week for the Gladiators, facing up basically a high-powered offense against arguably the most consistent team in the Overwatch League.
Yeah, it's going to be a rough week. Or a rough day, really. I think let's throw the Spitfire Mayhem game out. Spitfire will win. I'm doing the same for the Valiant and Dallas game. Valiant are going to win. Those two are, barring something crazy happening, Valiant and Spitfire win. I think you nailed it right on the head with Paris and Atlanta. It's just they've been so inconsistent. They've done these crazy swaps. I'm gonna give the benefit to Paris because I liked what I saw from Paris more than what I saw from Atlanta. I think Soon and Shadowburn being able to actually play DPS has reinvigorated that team. Kind of like what we thought would happen to the Fusion. When they get to play it, they'd be reinvigorated, but it didn't happen for them. It has happened to Paris. Atlanta, they're just losing steam, I think, at this point. So, Paris, I'm giving it that. The Shock Gladiators. This is one that I have no idea how to pick. I don't know how I feel about the Shock right now in the 2-2-2. I don't know if I want to call them a dominant team or if I want to be they're top 8 teams. It's just, I don't know how to fit them in.
Mm-hmm.
I would give the nod to the Shock over the Gladiators, but if come Sunday morning, somebody tells me, hey, the Gladiators beat the Shock, I'm not surprised at all. I think they have issues right now, oddly enough, with their main tank. The main tank for the Shock is an issue right now. Because, one, Reinhardt is not really a thing. So you lose a lot of the power of Super, where he was strongest on his Reinhardt. So are you bringing in, other tanks? What are you doing over there? What are you doing with your DPS line? It sounds like Striker's not going to play anymore. What about Architect? If Architect is good enough to be one of the final 5 DPS picked for the South Korean World Cup team, is he good enough to be a starting DPS for the San Francisco Shock?
Yeah, I thought going in that it was primarily going to be Architect and Striker, kind of like what we saw in the playoffs, because that seemed to be their tip of the hand essentially, but that hasn't translated. So I don't know, it's confusing.
I don't think they want to give up on the ultimate versatility player in Overwatch League is Rascal.
Mm-hmm.
Basically picks up a new hero and he's a top tier player. I don't know if they want to give that up. And Sinatra is the face of the franchise, and he's also a good DPS player. So it's what are they going to do with that? They need to kind of come to a decision, who's going to be playing at DPS, and then who's going to be our main tank.
Yeah, they're going to implement a rule where they can't bench both MVP finalists.
Yeah. I was like, oh no, Vancouver didn't do that yet. Almost, but not yet.
Almost, but not quite.
But yeah, I'm giving the nod to the Shock, but I'm up in the air about.
Alright, and then on Sunday, we have Reign versus Outlaws, Fusion versus Defiant, Titans versus Justice, and then Hunters versus Excelsior. Alright, so I'm gonna say Reign, Fusion, Titans, and I really think the Hunters are gonna beat NYXL. Like, NYXL to me, like, yes, they've been the second winningest team throughout the group stage, or the regular season, however you want to describe it. But they just haven't looked as dominant as what the record would have you believe.
No.
Now, I talked about this on Monday with Titans Justice. I don't think this is going to be as one-sided as the fair as the Titans Mayhem game, just because the Justice look like a much better team than the Mayhem, and I really hope Justice just come out and 4-0 the Mayhem, just to kind of, like, kick the horse while it's dead, essentially.
Yeah.
But, like, I just want to see, like, can Justice not get decapitated by the Dragon Blades as much as the Mayhem? I just want to see Hureg versus Corey, primarily.
Yeah, they're gonna straight up run Baptiste, just so they're like, crap, he's got a blade. Crap, he's got a blade. Crap, he's got a blade. Everyone, get under here. He can't kill us if we're invulnerable.
And then Hureg just snipes it, and then they're just like, oh shit.
Oh, crap. John is like, and Diva Bomb. Crap on a cracker. Yeah, like, Atlanta, Houston, I'm giving this, I'll give it to the Outlaws. I picked the Outlaws twice this week. Progress.
You crazy.
I think Fusion will beat Toronto. Toronto just looks lost right now. Obviously, I'm picking Titans over Justice, and I'm with you on the Hunter train for beating NYXL. It's just the NYXL are not the same as the NYXL that everyone knows and loves.
And, the real reason why the Hunters are going to win is because they make up the majority of the World Cup team, unlike NYXL for their country.
Exactly. That has nothing to do with South Korea having an insane amount of talent.
No,
it's just how good the Hunters are.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's just, I don't know if the NYXL is set up to deal with Wrecking Ball as well, as much as, obviously the Hunters play that.
Well, if that's the case, I would expect SPB to start and just come out on the Sombra.
Yeah, it could be. And I mean, I think that's why we saw a lot of Reaper, too. Because Reaper is actually pretty good against a Wrecking Ball.
And also, Sombra doesn't really counter Reaper.
Yeah, so, you do see a lot of... I could see New York coming out with a little bit of Reaper play. But... yeah, I'm going to go with the Hunters on that one. That's going to be, the upset pick of the week.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people, it's the favorite upset pick of the week. If that makes sense. A lot of people are picking him to actually, them to actually win. I just want to see what they have on High Noon, if it will load.
That's a good question. I don't even know what the percentages are showing.
Yeah, okay. It is showing, actually, 78% of the people are picking New York.
So 78% of the people are wrong.
Yeah, and it's just both the Houston matches are
split.
The closest.
Hmm.
Yeah. Same with the Spark and Charge Everything else is kind of one-sided.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a good week. I think this will kind of finalize what the Mei-ta is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Said it again.
I know you did.
It's going to we'll get a clear picture of what actually I think a lot of people didn't know what other teams are going to play, so they may have played it a little safer.
Yeah, so now it's a question of, is this going to be the week of counter picks?
Are we going to see something to counter the Mei picks? Are we going to see counters to, Roadhog, or, stuff like that? Like, it's going to be interesting to see what actually occurs. Like, Diva is still going to be picked as long as Anna's picked. And, I don't know. God, I just want Diva out of the meta. I really do. Like, nobody's talking that much about Diva being in every single meta. Because she's never truly I'm the sole star of this meta. She's just in every meta. Mm-hmm. And I am sick of her at this point. So.
I'm waiting for them to change it where every hero has a DMX mechanic just to infuriate you.
It's not the DMX part that actually...
Oh, I know, but it's just the fact that she'd be technically even more meta at that point.
No, she'd probably be less meta at that point. Because other people will get some of her abilities.
Maybe. I don't know. Oh. We'll see. But anyways, it's going to be an exciting week. We'll see if there's any other drastic shifts, if we'll see the rise of counter picks this week. But we're expecting a lot more shenanigery this week. Probably a lot of Mei. Probably, I'd say more Reaper this week, too. Based off of what we saw this past week. Yeah. But whole lot of Widow, probably again, so I'm looking forward to it. But with that being said, guys, let's go ahead, let's close out the show for tonight. So if you guys want to help us out, the best thing to do is to go leave us a review over on iTunes. We actually got 2 this week. 2. That is 2 more than what we normally have. So we greatly appreciate that, so we are always looking for ways to improve the show, to make for a better listen experience. And Ed, I know you're wanted to read one of them, but before you read that one, I'm gonna read the first one that we got from the week. Right. And that's a 5-star iTunes review from Salsable, who says, "Love the topics and discussions. I don't know why it took me this long to find this podcast, and I can tell you why. It's because you found Overwatch League Network first, and Heroes Never Die second, which is technically backwards, and that's why."
I mean, that's fair. You type in Overwatch, yeah, I can see it.
I mean, we are a network, don't get me wrong.
There.
But see, it's
not the Heroes Never Die network.
This is the baby of the network, okay? This is the OG of the network.
Yes. Despite me not being on it for 171 episodes.
This is true. But Ed, we also have another 5-star review, so why don't you go ahead and take that one from Mr. I Can Do That.
Alright, so I love this is my favorite review of all time.
And it has nothing to do with the fact that Ed's name is in it 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, it literally, they have my podcasting personality down to a T. And I couldn't be prouder of it. They make it seem kind of bad, but I'm very proud of it. So, Mr. I Can Do That. He did give us, this is a 5-star iTunes review, mind you. And when I first read this, the first word is Ed. I'm like, yup, this one's going to be a good one. So it sucks. Ed might have one of the smoothest brains ever. I'm convinced his goal is to be the Skip Bayless Colin Cowherd. I'm taking that as a compliment of OWL podcast and just give the most trash takes ever. I'm okay with this because you know what? I'm here to entertain. if I didn't give you all these crazy takes, trash or not, it wouldn't be as entertaining. That's what I'm here for. And I love Colin Cowherd. So, total compliment. But he goes on to say, that being said, you guys are hilarious and have an awesome synergy. Also, as a PC player, I don't know why Ed makes fun of console players so much when he used to play on 5K DPI. Here's why. Even on 5K DPI, I still didn't get auto-aim. Throwing that out there. He might as well have been playing with the controller at that point. Controller without auto-aim. I would maybe compliment Ed, but I don't want his head getting any bigger. LOL. Keep up the great work. You know what? You complimented me like 3 times in this thing without even knowing it. So my head is gigantic already. But, thank you for the 5-star review. I know I put on a lot of these crazy takes and spew out crazy random facts, true or not. I'm not going to say they're all true, because they're probably 50-50. Let's go 50-50. But it gets people talking, and it entertains people, and that's really why I do it. Is, you know what? I want to create conversations, I want to create intrigue, and I want to entertain people. So that's why I do all these kinds of things. So, yes, I may be Skip Bayless, Colin Cowherd-esque, but I am that way for a reason. To entertain and enlighten all of you with Big Great Ed. So, Jay-Z. I'm just calling you Jay-Z from now on.
It's Joe's ball.
It's Jay-Z, for Christ's sake. I'm going to screw it up. When is Ed going to guest on Overwatch League Network? I will guest whenever Totem invites me to guest. I'm throwing Totem under the bus on that one. I have said I will come on.
You know the funny thing about this is Ed like every now and then will like message me and he's like, yeah, just let me know. I'll come on whenever. And I don't respond.
Yeah. See, and Tonem's just like, oh my god, how long can I go without?
Okay. Here's the dirt, guys. Right? If Ed comes on Monday night, that means you have to put up with him back to back nights.
Back to back for a total of what? Probably 6 hours? Who wouldn't love listening to Ed for 6 hours in 1 week?
I can think of a handful of people.
Well, all those handful of people are wrong. Because it would be glorious. I'm going to leave it at that.
If you say so. But anyways.
And Jay-Z is a patron. He is requesting this, dang it. Listen to your patrons. Yes.
Uh-huh.
I'm winning. I am winning.
That's what he thinks. We'll see if that holds in the private league this week. Because it didn't hold this last week.
If I lose to Ramsey again this week, I'm just going to have to delete my computer.
You just have to drag him, like, by the ankles at BlizzCon.
Oh, no, I'm pulling so many pranks on you guys while we're out there.
It'll be a good time.
Yes.
Also, like, BlizzCon week for us is probably going to be a random week of uploads. Of just random shenanery.
Right? You'll be like...
completely unfiltered. It's going to happen.
You're like, Ed and Totem drunk at Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. Part 2. Go.
Yeah, see, like, if we do something like that, too, that just might be something that we just upload on, like, YouTube or, like, on our website, not on, like, the podcast feed. But anyways, guys, if you want to find more Overwatch-related content, which may or may not be recorded at Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles.
Or In-N-Out Burger, because we're getting In-N-Out Burger, damn it.
Or Umani, that works, too. Also really good. But you can find a listing of several Overwatch League, Path to Pro, Fantasy Overwatch League podcasts over on our website at owlnshow.com/OWRecall. And then every Sunday night, we got the weekly recall. There you can go and find all of the past week's podcast episodes all in one nice spot. So be sure to go on our website, go for the weekly recall there. You can also find the latest news and stuff for the podcast on Twitter at OWRecall. And as Ed mentioned, we do have a Patreon. And we have tiers starting at just $1 a month. This is another way to help support not just Heroes Never Die, but our podcast network as a whole. So for more information, be sure to check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/OWLnetwork, so you too can join the likes of our master and above patrons, Blazing Bob, Brendan, Joseph Ball, Owl, and Kesha in helping our network grow. Now, outside of that, you can also support us via Twitch Prime subs, Twitch subs, all that good stuff. So we greatly appreciate all the support. And just as a reminder, be sure to go on our website, which was redone over the weekend. We got a lot of new content out there, some news bits. We got an article based on, what the evolving meta was this past week, which I'm going to do again this week to see if there's any other shifts or new team compositions or rise of counter picks, all of that good stuff and more. So expect more on that front from us. So, you can find all of our podcast episodes and stuff there as well. But Ed, why don't you go ahead and let our listeners know how they can get a hold of us over on the social medias?
All right, so you can reach us through email at hndoverwatch@gmail.com. We are on Twitter, and that's at hndoverwatch. As Totem had said, our newly reworked website is owlnshow.com. We are on YouTube, and that's youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. You can come join us over on Discord, and that's at discord.me/OWLNshow. We are streaming presently live on Twitch, so twitch.tv/OWLNshow. We're a Twitch affiliate, so come over, help us out with your Amazon Prime subs. We greatly appreciate it. We do record pretty regularly, so Overwatch League Network airs Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific without Ed and on Tuesdays, we have OWL by the Numbers, our fantasy podcast that me, Totem, Ramses, and Blaze Bob do at 6 p.m. Pacific. And then we have this show, obviously, Heroes Never Die, airs Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then host streams, when available, run on a flex schedule, so be sure to follow us to be notified when we go live. It's ending up being Mondays, kind of before Overwatch League Network, and Thursday nights.
Yeah, we should definitely plan on finishing up replacements tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
For DPS.
I think we'll definitely do that. So tune into that. We do have the Patreon at patreon.com/OWLnetwork that Totem went over. You can find me personally on Twitter at @EdinarOverwatch and on Twitch at EdinarOW. Totem, where can they find you?
Well, I'm over on Twitter at TumblyDrunkCTR. And of course, if I'm not there, I'm just hanging out on our Discord, basically 99% of the time. But with that being said, guys, thank you so much again for hanging out with us on another episode of Heroes Never Die. This has been episode number 171. I have been your host, Tumbly Drunk, joined as always by my co-host, Edinar. And we hope to see you guys back tomorrow night, when I'm sure we will be doing PTR placements, so you too can watch Mr. 5K DPI DPS in action, and we'll see.
Okay, hold on.
We'll see. I know it's outdated. I just want to see.
I'm down to 800.
Yeah, I want to see if the tank placements mirror the DPS, if we're working similar roles. Because that was a pretty big uptake from what we were expecting, so I want to see if we can do the same on another role for you, because that would be pretty awesome.
Especially on my Edinar account, which I haven't done any real placements on in 9 seasons.
Right.
So, tune into that shenanigans.
Absolutely. So with that said, guys, take care and have a good night.
Have a good one.